felt like everything was just like falling into place, lining up perfectly for an awesome way for me to be able to support my husband through the rest of his college career. Then, just a couple weeks before graduation, I had the strongest impression that I was supposed to turn all of it down, quit my job, and not go to grad school, turn down grad school, not get a part time job. And so I did.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I'm staying here.
To whom else shall we go?
The Why I Stay podcast, where we find joy in staying in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm your host, Lindsay Clyde, and I want to ask you, why do you stay? Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Why I Stay podcast. Okay, so I was just talking to Jessica after we stopped the recording, and we were talking about the mission of the Why I Stay podcast. And I want to delineate that here. My mission is to collect as many testimonies, as many witnesses of Jesus Christ from the Latter-day Saint population as I possibly can, because the sheer number of people we will never hear from in general conference just astounds me. There are so many of us living diligent and dedicated lives, just going about our day-to-day business, relying on Jesus Christ, finding him in our lives, watching him heal and comfort and take us out of our sticky situations. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear all of it because they are powerful. And can you imagine a collection of millions of testimonies out there in the internet, just out there to be heard, to put forth our witnesses? This is Jesus Christ. He lives. Oh, it just lights me up. And this is why we stay, right? This is why I stay, keep doing this podcast. It's because I want to hear from you. So if you have a story, if you have a testimony, you have witness that you want to share with us, email me, whyistaypodcast@gmail.com. All right, guys. Today we have Jessica Spackman. She's going to be telling us about a weird prompting that didn't make sense to her, how she decided to turn down all of her opportunities after graduating, and for what reason, you're going to find out. The next one is about having social anxiety at church. Can you relate? And how she had courage in her attempts in coming back, and how she uses 2 Nephi 32 to help her make decisions about her health journey. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's get going. Jessica Spackman. Hello, welcome back to the Why I Stay podcast, the podcast where we discover and where we love and where we find joy, and where we talk about the things that are hard in our lives, but also the things that are amazing and the way that Jesus Christ has shown up for us. And I can't even express my gratitude and happiness for having Jessica Spackman here today. Jessica, welcome to Why I Stay.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
All right, so this is how it's going down. We've got rapid fire questions, followed by 3 exploratory questions. And finally, we've got the question, why do you stay? So Jessica, are you ready?
I'm totally ready.
Always. How old are you?
I'm 27.
Do you have any nicknames?
Yeah, I have all the nicknames. I go by Jess and Jessie and Jessica and Spackman and Spackalacken, and anything in between.
That's my favorite one at the end there. Where do you live?
I now live in Independence, Missouri.
What is your favorite food?
Food is a touchy subject right now, but most recent, I'll just say what I've been eating the most lately is my homemade egg potato salad, which is a weird answer for me, but it's working. So that's my favorite food right now.
What is your current hobby?
Current hobby is trying to read the books I already own and failing at
it. I was just going through our bookshelf and I thought, like, are you ever going to read this book, Steve? And he's like, yeah, I want to read it. And I'm like, but you keep finding new books on your phone that you want to read more than this one, or else you would have already read it. That is a very noble pursuit. Very
heart's in the right place.
What is your most favorite calling you've ever held?
In theory, I really like being primary pianist, but I think my most favorite was young women's.
Nobody's testing you on that. No one's gonna. The bishop's like, okay. What is a controversial opinion that you hold? Like, everybody loves Crocs, but you hate them.
I have a lot of these, but I'll go on the softer side today. and say that I don't really like soda.
All right. Has it always been that way, or is that a recent development?
Actually, this is a natural thing for me. I just don't really love soda. I could probably take a root beer a couple times a year, but that's about it. Really
I
want
mean,
it.
and I think, don't they call it pop out there in Missouri? I'm not sure. My friend from Nebraska calls it pop, but
I don't know. I haven't lived here long enough to confirm that is certainly true. And I also don't really talk about soda because I don't ask for it. So
but get back to me because now I'm curious about what they do out there.
let you know if I find it.
Yeah, thanks. What is your biggest dream?
My biggest dream is to just, I'm living it. I love it. I love being a mom and I love having my wonderful husband and being supported through the Lord in my church. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but I feel like I'm living it and I love it.
Not cheesy, was beautiful. What is something about you that is the same now as it was when you were in high school?
I still love to sing. I'm not anymore in any singing groups, but I love to get back into it and I still do a lot of it.
And the bonus question is, what is the most surprising thing you've found in Missouri so far since you've been there?
Okay, these people really don't have it together with the snow removal. Okay, I moved from Utah. I lived in Logan, Utah for like 4+ years, 4 or 5 years. I don't know. Used to just shoveling snow all the time. Never had a snow day, even though sometimes it'd snow 1 to 2 feet of snow, and you just go about life as normal. But
Yeah.
here, like it snows like 3 or 4 inches, and they can't get it together. School's canceled, and they don't plow the roads.
Do you think they all secretly just keep up this act so that they can have their like snow days and days off work and things like that?
Actually, yes, and I don't really blame them for it, but I just am so baffled by it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Don't drive anywhere. Well, it's because the roads aren't plowed. You can't get anywhere.
It sounds like my friends in Texas. It seems like that, and New Mexico as well. I've heard that same thing. So,
Well, I lived in Texas too, and they don't have it together either, but it only snows once a year. In Missouri, it snows a lot. Like, not as much as Utah, but it snowed like probably at least 8 times since I've been here this year.
yeah, we got to find some local and ask, like, hey, what's really going on here? You guys just want to ditch out of school? It's okay if you do, just admit it, right?
Yeah, I got that in.
That moves us to our exploratory questions. And the first one is, when is a time that you had to go on faith because a prompting didn't make sense? And what did you learn?
So I loved this question because this has happened to me so many times in my life. I mean, changing my major in college when it didn't make sense and I didn't know why, getting married as quickly as I did, starting Latter-day Saints for life, moving to Missouri that we did not plan on doing. But I want to talk about probably I don't know, the easiest thing to see from the outside and about how unexpected I guess it was, um, which was something that happened right as I was about to graduate from college with my bachelor's degree. I had an internship that was about to take me on full time with wonderful benefits. It was going to be a great move for me and my family. I enjoyed the work, I enjoyed the employer. It seemed like an obvious step forward, and I had just gotten accepted into grad school as well. And things were moving forward for a second part time job for it to cover payment for all of grad school as well. I felt like everything was just like falling into place, lining up perfectly for an awesome way for me to be able to support my husband through the rest of his college career. And then just a couple weeks before graduation, I had the strongest impression that I was supposed to turn all of it down, quit my job and not go to grad school, turn down grad school, not get a part-time job. And so I did. And I felt really at peace about it. I prayed about it a lot. Like, are you really sure about that? He said yes. And I didn't feel like I was supposed to look for anything else. I turned it down. We had this great post-graduation trip lined up to go see my friend get married in California, which is a wonderful trip. Right after graduation, I quit my job. I had no responsibilities. It was great. But on the last day of that trip, on the way home, I found out I was pregnant with my first child. And I was so excited. I was very happy about it. And it wasn't until about a week later I found out what that meant for me in my life. I kind of didn't leave my apartment for months, let alone my bed, vomiting several times every single day, waiting until usually it took until noon or 2 or 4 o'clock to keep down water and like crackers. And just trying to stay alive was my only accomplishment that I had for months. I just felt like utterly like destroyed, I guess, in a lot of ways. But I was so grateful to the Lord for telling me what I was supposed to do for that. He didn't tell me everything about what was coming, but he told me what I needed to be able to take care of myself and not be letting everybody else down at the same time. And I'm so grateful that he did that for me in such a peaceful way that I knew that I was doing the right thing to turn all that down, even though I didn't understand why. And looking back, I'm really grateful for it.
President Oaks, and I'm just going to paraphrase, but he said, the Lord often doesn't tell us why, but he will tell us what, and he will tell us how. And I found that in my life as well. Like asking the why question rarely gets answered. We can ask it. Sometimes it does, but rarely do we actually see it. And how neat that you could actually see the why pretty soon after your decision. That peace, like how would you describe if somebody is wondering, what does that peace feel like when you know you're following what God is wanting you to do? What does that peace feel like for you?
There are a couple parts to it. I guess the hard part that has to come first is the surrender
Mm.
in your heart, which is so hard. I'm still terrible at it, and I shouldn't be because I've had enough experiences to know better. You have to put aside the pride and the feeling that I'm in control and I know what's best for me. I know what's gonna work,
Mm.
and being able to put that aside and put your trust in somebody who has a better vision, higher vision than you have. And especially at first, that can be really scary. But with every experience that you have in doing that, it's so freeing. And then, the times when you pray to Heavenly Father to know if this is the right path or not. And if he gives you the green light, then you know that everything's gonna be at least okay. Maybe not everything's gonna go the way you want it to, but it's just so freeing and it's easier to leave behind fear. And I say this from as a person who has a lot of anxiety a lot of the time naturally. But I don't know how I would survive without that knowledge that I have someone else to trust in, who can see around corners.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you. All right, the next question is, when have you had to have courage in your discipleship?
So, for convenience, I want to step us back into about the same point in my life right before graduation from college. Again, there are a lot of times I could have chosen, but I felt like this was appropriate to bring in for your podcast and for the story that we lined up before. In that, I guess for a long time, especially since my mission, I'd had quite a bit of anxiety, especially socially triggered anxiety. And that was, I guess, really new for me as it kept getting more difficult, how hard things were getting, and I didn't know how to handle it well. And church meetings, especially, really difficult in a ward where I didn't feel like I knew a lot of people, didn't feel like I fit in. I was grateful I could go to church with my husband, and when I was sitting by him, I could usually be fine. But there was a long time when I especially couldn't go to Relief Society, or I try to go and I'd have to leave early. That happened pretty often and it wasn't getting better. And then I got pregnant, right? In this majorly physically debilitating thing in morning church, just throwing up all the time. I wasn't leaving my house. So I missed almost every church meeting and activity for several months. It wasn't until I was probably about 6 months pregnant that I felt well enough to say, I'm going to try to go to Relief Society today. So I went in and I know it sounds a little dramatic to say, but it felt a little bit like going back into the battlefield to face an enemy that I'd already fought and like just escaped with my life from. And I was feeling pretty proud of myself, but still terrified. And I came and sat down in a chair and waited for all the ladies to sit down around me. And this one sister sat down next to me. And I recognized her as a girl who lived in my apartment building. And we had met previously at a mutual friend's house like many months before, well before I was pregnant. But we'd like communicated in the Facebook group, the work Facebook group comments and stuff. So I was like, okay, I know you. Hopefully you're not going to be like too overbearing, but I can maybe like handle a little like conversation. That'll be okay. As long as she's not too overbearing, but she was really like all energy. She said, "Hi, are you new?" And I was like, "Oh, cool. This is awkward. Great. I wish I hadn't come now." But I tried. It wasn't great. I kind of tried to end the conversation, but in a nice way. And I said, "No, I'm not new. I've lived here for over a year, but I just haven't been to Relief Society since January." And I could just see her freeze. And I don't know exactly what was going on in her head, but I'm pretty sure it was something like, "This is an inactive member who's come back to church, and this is my one shot to make sure she has a good experience and doesn't turn her back on God for her whole life. And this is my chance to make like be an important role in her eternal salvation, right? So she like looked me in the eye and gave me this look that was supposed to be really kind, made me feel a little bit like a run over puppy. And she's like, "Well, we are so happy you're here." And I was like, "We? Who's we? What are you talking about?" It didn't feel personal. It didn't feel sincere. She didn't remember me, and I didn't really know what to say. But the conversation was over and class was starting. I survived. And then she didn't talk to me the rest of the class. And I don't think anybody else talked to me that whole day. That was my only interaction back at church. And so I like walked home with my husband so confused and like baffled, I guess, because I realized two things. Number one, I had kind of become I'd taken on the label of an inactive member of the church. And I didn't feel like I was though, because I was requesting the sacrament to be brought to my home. I was reading scriptures, even though my mind was like super foggy and fuzzy, but I was trying. I was reading scriptures every day. My husband and I did family home evening, and I felt like I was connected with God. But from the outside in, other people probably just saw me as someone who was giving up on church or was perfectly happy to send my husband to go off, or maybe they just didn't remember me. Whatever it was, I knew at least for somebody I had taken on that label. And the other thing was that I was experiencing now to some sort of degree like what it feels like to come back to church even after some time of not being there. And I know it's different than a lot of people's experience in coming back to church and like truly leaving the faith or truly leaving the church deliberately. But I have more empathy now for other people who have that experience because I know what it feels like to go to church week after week and keep trying and feeling like you're not really fitting in. And I also know what it feels like to miss church and like to feel pretty hurt that nobody even like noticed you were gone. And when you do come back, that nobody knows who you are. While I was gone, I really was struggling. I could have really used other people's reminders that I was missed or offers to help, but I didn't really get that. Um, and if I had been living in a different spiritual place at the time, then I don't know if I would have survived spiritually very well through that moment. For me, I was really connected with God, and I'm really grateful for that because that hurt me, but I kept going, I kept trying, and it didn't hurt my relationship with God because I know who He is. And that's the time I'm really grateful for myself for continuing to try despite how difficult it was for me mentally, emotionally, to keep going to church and also to keep trying to maintain those ties between me and the Lord because that's what gave me the courage and the faith to keep moving forward, even though, for a lot of selfish reasons, it wasn't there for me to want to be there. But my desire was there to keep going to church and to keep reaching out to God because of Him.
I think there are a lot of people out there who can relate in terms of feeling that social anxiety about coming to church. And yeah, it does take courage. And it's not over dramatic to say I was fighting an enemy, like these feelings, and the emotions and all of the hormones that rush through your brain, the chemical things that are happening that encourage you to feel that fear and that anxiety, those are real. And I think there are probably a lot of people listening who are like, yeah, actually, I feel that every day. And so I'm so glad that you called that to attention. And I think all of us could do a better job of just being sincere and authentic when we're interacting with people at church. And it takes practice. And we're probably not going to get it right most of the time. And I guess, even if we don't remember somebody, I mean, an apology would have gone a little bit of a long way. I think maybe
Yeah.
just, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Just not trying to like pretend it never happened, but just calling it what it is and moving forward. That way we can build more trust and like relationship with people. But yeah, I think that definitely is an amazing example of having courage, coming back and choosing to keep going even. It's huge. Yeah.
For the record, I don't blame that girl who talked to me that way. She was trying, and I appreciate the effort now from a more separate point of view. Like I didn't have the relationships with other people in the ward, but that's also only secondary to the relationship you're trying to build when you're going to church.
But important too, like It is so important. And obviously you were able to be very mature about it and process it over time in a way that is healthy. And so I guess let's just encourage everybody to just try, keep trying because yeah, you're going there for God and hopefully we can have good experiences with others, but sometimes we just have to forgive and it's really hard. And you're a great example of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So the last question is, what is a scripture that has given you strength recently?
I won't give the cop-out answer, which is all of them or the whole book of Mormon. I want to call attention to 2nd Nephi 32. I don't bring it up because it happens to coincidentally be in this week's Come Follow Me
Follow
read.
me. Yeah.
My goals is that every single time I log onto social media, I open up this document and I read my purpose of why I'm using social media in the first place. And I read my, I guess, cardinal direction scriptures. And 2nd Nephi 32, and these verses are one of those. And I want to call attention to verses 3 and 9. Verse 3 says, "Wherefore I said unto you, feast upon the words of Christ. For behold, the words of Christ will tell you all things ye should do." Verse 9 says, "But behold, I say unto you that ye must pray always and not faint, that ye must not perform anything unto the Lord, save in the first place ye shall pray unto the Father in the name of Christ, that he will consecrate thy performance unto thee, that thy performance may be for the welfare of thy soul." There's a lot I could talk about how these scriptures have directed my life in a lot of ways, but I want to bring the most recent thing for me. For a long time, for a lot of years, I've been experiencing this culmination of hormonal, skin, and gut symptoms that have been very not good and not getting better, despite trying to improve my overall health and going to different doctors, trying different things, different tests, different methods of solving the issue. But it wasn't until maybe about a year ago that I really took my heart and laid it on the altar and I said, God, this is all in your hands. Man is not going to solve this for me. Or if man does, then it's only going to be through your very divine intervention. And I need your help. And I really had to take these scriptures to heart. Right now, I'm at the point that almost every single time I go to the grocery store or I go start to make a meal or even go to grab a snack, I have to pray. And by have to, I mean I don't have to. The Lord's going to let me do whatever I want. But if I want things to go well, then I will pray to the Lord and say, Heavenly Father, I want to go have a brownie right now. If I ask a good question with real intent to listen, is this craving that I want a brownie, is this going to serve my body well? Is it going to honor thee? Is it going to help me to serve my family? Am I going to wish that I listened to you more if I go ahead and do what I want here? And sometimes the Lord tells me that the thing that I want to have is great and exactly what my body needs. And I get that confirmation through the Spirit and through prayer. And sometimes the answer is no. Most recently, I wanted that brownie or whatever the snack was that I wanted. I prayed and I didn't feel like I got my answer. So I went back to verse 3. The words of Christ will tell you all things that you should do. Opened my scriptures and immediately got my answers that food is sealed for me and it will be revealed to me again at a later date. And right now it is not for me. I share this because I know that there are a lot of people who will believe that the little things don't matter to pray about. And yes, the Lord gives us agency. And yes, there are a lot of choices that don't have eternal consequence, and the Lord's going to let you have some trial and error. But it's never a mistake to pray about it. That's what I've learned. And if you don't get an answer, then he'll trust you, or at least it's going to work out eternally one way or another. But if you really want some guidance and you want knowledge and you're willing to work for it, open the scriptures and dig for it, feast on the words of Christ, pray that thy performance may be for the welfare of thy soul, then you will get the answers you need and all things can be revealed. And I say this from experience, but also from hope and faith, because I've had some answers, but I'm not at all to the full solution or to the results or to the healing that I know is in the future. It's been promised to me because of priesthood blessings, because of personal prayer I've had through the Lord with the Lord, but it hasn't fully arrived yet. But I have faith and hope that it will.
That's incredible. And I think actually this too, the social anxiety and the eating thing, I think we're all like, or as a society, coming to trying to figure out like what is going on. Like obviously there's something wrong and people are suffering because of it. So I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who would like to receive that knowledge, that have the Lord tell them, actually for your body at this time, this is not what you need. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because I also have a testimony of these things, that he does love to answer us. He loves to give us knowledge. And when we really truly are seeking for the correct purposes, he comes through. And I don't want those experiences where we say, okay, I need to find my keys. Let's pray. I don't want those to become trite, because they're the tender mercies. They're the good gifts that he loves to give us. Even if we're going through a harder trial over, an overarching trial that we're dealing with, in the meantime, he loves to give us little beautiful gifts, and they're not so little, especially when they add up. So thank you for testifying of that.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I invite everybody to undertake the challenge of praying about as many little things as you can with true and honest intent. And I'm sorry I don't have more answers to share with anyone else who's going through these struggles besides going to the Lord and doing the work.
All right, Jessica, this has been an amazing interview so far, and we're at the very end now. Are you ready for the final question?
For Rizzle.
When was the last time I heard that? I love it. All right, Jessica, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Because I'm desperate. Because I need God. I need Jesus Christ and his healing power for my body and for my spirit. I can't do it alone, and I'll try for even an hour and it doesn't go well. I know that there's so much more happiness in him, and he's given me so much, and I want to love him back. I want to be there for him. And because I have a testimony that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is his true church on the earth, that he's leading it, and that it is through it that I have received some of the biggest blessings from him, and repeated testimonies of its truth and of the, not Spanish, the veracity of his covenants, of his temple, and of the vision of what it means to become Zion, become the people who's preparing for him to come again. And I want to be ready for it.
Jessica, thank you for your testimony and your witness. We have been blessed today. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for what you're doing, Lindsay. Really.
All right, guys, what do you think? What is on your mind? What just lingered with you? That is what I want you to write down in your journal, and I want you to pray about today. How can you take that lingering thought and turn it into something the Lord will help you develop and become? Also, I want you on this podcast. Email me, whyistaypodcast@gmail.com. Guys, I'm so grateful for you. Next week, we've got Jasmine Rapley coming on from Scripture Plus. So you're not going to want to miss it. We'll see you next time. And again, thank you for staying with us. The Why I Stay podcast is a faith-based podcast exploring the lives and experiences of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This podcast is not produced or endorsed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we do love that church. All rights reserved. And a great big shout out to Fast Sounds from Pixabay for the amazing and jammin' intro, outro music. Thanks, guys.